Meera Patel and Luke Morgan seemed like two people from completely different worlds. She, a devoted Indian housewife in a quiet Los Angeles suburb. He, the charming 22-year-old son of her neighbors. But behind closed curtains, their secret affair would spiral into a deadly confrontation that left one of them lying in a pool of blood and the other facing a lifetime behind bars. In 2018, the quiet suburbs of Los Angeles seemed like the perfect place for 36-year-old Meera Patel to build a happy life. Born and raised in Mumbai, she had moved to the United States a decade earlier with her husband, Raj, who worked as a highly paid IT consultant. The couple had settled into a spacious two-story house on a tree-lined street where neighbors greeted each other politely and crime was almost unheard of. Their lives appeared enviable from the outside, comfortable, stable, and far removed from the chaos of the city. Meera spent most of her days tending to her home. She loved cooking elaborate Indian meals, keeping her garden neatly trimmed, and volunteering at the local library on weekends. She wore bright saris on special occasions, bringing a splash of color to the otherwise quiet neighborhood. Raj's demanding work schedule often took him across the country for weeks at a time, and while he provided everything she could need materially, his absence left long stretches of silence in the large house. The neighbors saw Meera as warm and approachable. She often offered them homemade sweets during festivals, smiling politely as she made small talk over the white picket fences. To everyone around her, she seemed content, even fortunate. No one noticed the subtle changes, the way her gaze lingered a little too long at nothing in particular, the way she sighed quietly when she thought no one was watching. Her evenings were the loneliest. After dinner, she would sit by the kitchen window, watching the streetlights flicker on. Somewhere deep inside, she longed for more than her routine, something unpredictable, something that would make her heart race. She never imagined that the quiet life she had built could shatter so easily, or that the first crack in its surface would appear just across the street. Across the street from the Patels lived the Morgan family, a friendly, middle-class household that had been in the neighborhood for years. Their son, Luke Morgan, had recently returned home after finishing college in Arizona. At 22, Luke was in that restless stage of life, full of confidence, eager for excitement, but with no clear plans for the future. His tall frame and easy smile made him popular with women his age, but he often found himself bored during long, empty afternoons in the suburbs. Luke's parents both worked long hours, leaving early in the morning and returning late in the evening. This meant Luke spent much of his time alone, wandering between the gym, coffee shops, and his family's driveway. One particularly hot summer afternoon, Meera was struggling to carry several heavy grocery bags from her car. Luke happened to notice her from his porch and jogged over to help. It was a simple gesture, but it made an impression. Meera thanked him politely, noticing how effortlessly he lifted the weight from her hands. After that, Luke seemed to appear more often. Sometimes he offered to bring her mail to the door, other times he stopped by with a casual question about gardening or cooking. At first, Meera thought nothing of it, but there was a certain energy in the way he lingered, in the way his eyes held hers a fraction too long. He began dropping hints about how boring life felt in the neighborhood, and Meera found herself agreeing, almost without thinking. What began as occasional visits soon became a regular occurrence. Luke would knock on her door when Raj was away, staying to chat for hours. Behind closed curtains, the harmless conversations turned into something far more dangerous, something that neither of them seemed willing to stop. The affair began quietly, almost cautiously, but it didn't take long for it to consume both of them. What started as stolen kisses and whispered meetings quickly grew into something more intense. Meera began rearranging her days around Luke's visits, skipping volunteer shifts at the library and ignoring calls from friends. The once tidy schedule that defined her life was now dictated by when Luke could come over. Luke, for his part, became increasingly possessive. He no longer waited for invitations, showing up unannounced and staying for hours. His car would be parked in her driveway in broad daylight, and he seemed unconcerned about being seen. He left behind small but noticeable traces of his presence, his jacket over a chair, a coffee mug on the counter, a faint scent of his cologne in the air. Meera found herself both thrilled and uneasy at the same time. The change in her behavior didn't go unnoticed. Neighbors began to whisper, though no one had any concrete proof. A few even mentioned to Raj in passing that they had seen a young man around the house while he was away, but Raj dismissed it as harmless. Still, Meera knew the risk was growing. Despite the tension, she couldn't bring herself to end it. Luke filled a void she hadn't even fully admitted was there, a mix of excitement, attention, and the intoxicating feeling of being desired. But his temper was starting to surface in small ways. He questioned her when she didn't answer his calls right away. He grew irritated if she canceled plans. The passion that had once felt intoxicating now carried a sharp edge. What neither of them realized was that the affair had passed a point of no return. The secrecy that once made it thrilling was becoming the very thing that would lead them both toward disaster. By the end of 2019, Meera's excitement had faded into a constant undercurrent of fear. The affair that once felt like a secret escape now felt like a trap closing in around her. She began to imagine what would happen if Raj found out, picturing the shame, the broken marriage, and the gossip that would spread through their community. The thought of losing everything she had built in America filled her with dread. Luke, however, refused to let go. When Meera hinted at ending things, his easygoing charm dissolved into anger. He accused her of leading him on, of using him to fill her loneliness. What had started as flirtation had transformed into a dangerous kind of control. His visits became demands, and his tone shifted from persuasive to threatening. One night, while Raj was away on a business trip, Meera received a message from Luke that made her stomach drop. A photograph of the two of them together, clearly intimate. The text that followed was chilling in its simplicity. If she didn't continue seeing him, he would send it to her husband. Meera felt cornered, trapped between protecting her marriage and keeping Luke from destroying her life. Desperate to calm the situation, she agreed to meet him the following evening at her house to talk things through. She convinced herself she could reason with him, that if she stayed calm, they could end it quietly. But in her mind, a sense of unease was already growing. When Luke arrived, the atmosphere was tense from the start. His voice was sharp, his gestures aggressive. The conversation turned into an argument within minutes. Meera could feel the walls of her quiet home closing in, and she realized that this meeting would not end the way she had hoped. The argument in the kitchen grew louder, each word more heated than the last. Luke accused Meera of betraying him, of pretending their relationship had meant nothing. His voice rose until it echoed against the tiled walls, his hands moving in sharp, agitated gestures. Meera's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. She kept backing away, her palms slick with sweat, but he followed, closing the distance with every step. She tried to defuse the situation, telling him to leave, but he refused. His anger had taken on a dangerous edge, his face twisted with frustration. Then he reached for her arm, his grip firm, and something inside her snapped. Panic surged through her, and her eyes darted to the heavy marble rolling pin on the counter. In a single motion, she grabbed it and swung. The sound of the impact was sickening. Luke staggered back, eyes wide in shock, before collapsing to the floor. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by Meera's ragged breathing. She dropped the rolling pin, her hands trembling violently as she knelt beside him. His chest wasn't moving. A dark pool of blood began to spread beneath his head, seeping into the grout between the tiles. Meera's thoughts spiraled into chaos. She told herself it had been an accident, that she had acted in self-defense. But fear of what would happen next quickly took over. Acting on impulse, she dragged his body into the garage, her muscles straining with the effort. She covered him with old blankets, thinking she would have time to figure out what to do. She didn't notice the faint trail of blood leading to the garage door or the way it slowly began to seep underneath. Details that would betray her before the morning sun rose. By morning, Meera had barely slept. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at her cold cup of tea, her mind replaying the night over and over. Every creak of the house made her flinch. Outside, the quiet street carried on as usual, neighbors walking dogs, sprinklers ticking rhythmically. She thought she might have more time to decide what to do, but fate moved faster than she expected. A delivery driver pulling up to the Morgans' house noticed something unusual at the Patel residence. A dark, sticky liquid was seeping from under the closed garage door, forming a small, irregular puddle on the driveway. Curious and uneasy, he walked closer, then immediately stepped back. He called 911 without hesitation, reporting what he had seen. Within minutes, police cars and an ambulance arrived, their flashing lights shattering the calm of the suburban morning. Officers knocked on Meera's door, and when she opened it, her pale face and vacant eyes told them something was very wrong. They entered the garage and found Luke's body under the blankets, the air thick with the metallic smell of blood. Meera didn't resist. She sat on the kitchen floor, hands folded in her lap, speaking in a flat, exhausted tone. She told them everything: the affair, the threats, the fight, the fatal blow. Her confession was recorded in full, leaving little room for doubt. The case quickly became a media sensation. Headlines painted her as the Indian housewife, whose suburban life had spiraled into betrayal and violence. At trial, her lawyers argued self-defense, but prosecutors emphasized her attempts to hide the body. The jury found her guilty of second-degree murder, sentencing her to 25 years in prison. Raj divorced her quietly, selling the house soon after. The street returned to its calm rhythm, but the shadow of what happened there never fully faded.